All right, Ed, introduction, please.
Okay, well, hello, everybody who is tuned in. I just want to get this off of my screen. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me that well, I am an NPR fan. I'll listen to anything that they put on the radio. And one of the better things is a show called How I Built This, which features various entrepreneurs around the country who took an idea into a prospering business. And they usually have an interesting tale to tell. And it occurred to me that I actually know a couple of people like that.
And Freda has a question about getting in touch with the IR.
Yeah. Once again, I'll repeat that please mute your mute button. And again, if you can disappear, that's good too, just to help their bandwidth. Oh yeah, so I'm going to try to mimic this show as if it's as easy to do. And we're going to actually do a little bit of a interview between me and our guests. And certainly we respect your questions too, but if you'll save yours to the end for anything that we missed. So our guests are John and Kara Weld. Their company is Immersion Research. Maybe some of you are wearing some of the gear right now as you are watching this. I'm sorry, I forgot to put my shorts on.
Your namesake shorts.
That's right.
Don't stand up, Ed.
Yeah, my name is not BVD. Now I could have had a lot of different people, but one thing that really tipped the balance with you all, you know, I rejected Bill Gates and Elon Musk. But
Yeah.
one of the reasons I ask you is that you all are part of the tribe. I mean, you're homeboys and homegirls. And
That is
I
true.
wish you would start off by just giving us your creds to that extent. By the way, Kara, Confluence and Ohiopyle is part of our home. So,
No doubt.
so a little bit of your background, please.
A little background. Well, let's see. I grew up in DC and I started boating with the canoe cruisers with my dad in the late 70s. Ed, I don't think you were probably around just quite then yet, but the canoe cruisers was an organization back then. And I raced slalom with the Sea Cats. You know, back then it was a different sport. For those of you back then, you know, can remember that long ago, or boating back then, can remember it was slalom and racing, and you know, all part of the culture. And I ended up sort of through a very fortunate break, or maybe unfortunate, ended up going to Valley Mill Summer Camp with Tom McEwen when I was about 12. And when I saw Tom and the kayaking program there, it, you know, changed my life. I'm sure a lot of people in DC have heard this before, but you know, Tom has influenced a lot of people, and you can put my name on that list. And he introduced countless suburban kids to a dirtbag lifestyle that, for some of us, was pretty darn attractive. And it began my lifelong interest in kayaking. Around college, I was teaching. You know, I ended up working at Valley Mill Camp, teaching kayaking at the lake and then on the river there. And then I started teaching kayaking, a river sport, in Confluence in college. And that's where I met Kara. And I'll let Kara tell her side of the story. But shortly thereafter, a few years after working at river sport, we started IR. We can pick up that a little bit later. But
So I grew up in Confluence at the put-in of the Middle Yacht. I'm sure a lot of you have been there. My mom got a job teaching in the elementary school out of college, and my dad followed her along because he was an outdoorsman and thought, oh, this is a perfect place to live. And so they had me, and my dad would drag me down the Middle Yacht. We didn't know anything about kayaking. He built a fiberglass kayak for me. This was in the 70s. And we just tag along. My first paddle was a 210. Um, and and then I don't know if anyone knows this story, or there was a guy named John Lichter who was a raft guide in Ohio who had raced some slalom, and he moved to Confluence and started river sport and hung some slalom gates. And I was immediately like, that's what I want to do. So from there, I started racing and ended up in college in DC and trained on the feeder canal and raced on the US team for 20 some years or so. No,
8 years.
no,
Yeah, 8 or
10
9
years. I don't know. It was a long time ago. But so yeah, I'm home girl. I lived in DC for a long time, and John and I actually met on the Beltway. No lie, not kidding. We met on the Beltway. That's another story. There's no accident. Or
Okay, well, so right off the bat, you're special to us, okay? Part of the tribe. We appreciate
Yeah.
that. I should also mention that John has appeared and given us some delightful shows in the past with Andy Bridge, with some totally absurd paddling trips across Baffin Island and Borneo.
That's right.
Something about the bees attracted them.
I think it was the islands, but yeah, the bees were there too. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm glad to make it a third time tonight. So, but really, we're supposed to be talking about business, aren't we?
Hmm.
And really, first, I think we got to start off is how did you get in and get into this? Before I do, I should mention the person I'm trying to emulate. He says that people that do what you do generally can be put into two categories. One is the person who's toiled away at this industry for a while and finally figures that he or she can do a better job and takes off and forms their own place. Then there's someone who comes up with an idea and says, I'm going to do it, and has no idea what they're talking about, how they're going to do it, but just
Ed, we're kind of losing you there. Are you there?
some other noise.
Yeah. Ed, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, Ed, I was trying to mute somebody else and the thing jumped and I accidentally muted you, so unmute yourself. I was trying to mute the person making all that noise.
Okay, well, it sounds like you had picked up some of it. We're just trying to classify you, whether you're just wild-eyed mad man, mad woman dumping into something, or whether you actually knew what you're doing. So how did you get into this?
Definitely the latter. Yeah. So I was, let's place the time. It was 1996, 97, somewhere in there. I had been teaching kayaking for, river sport for 6 or 7 years at that point. I was, out of college. And so I was doing that during the summer. During the winter, I was, at that time, for a while, I was building boats, at the Andy Bridge at Baltimore, and also working with Tom McEwen in Mexico, leading kayaking trips to Mexico. And Kara, I'll let her fill in her side of the story in a minute, but Kara was racing, but basically we were flat. That's the long and short of it. And the other thing that was happening at that time was there was, at least we picked up on a change in the sport of kayaking. We had grown up, as we mentioned earlier, in kind of the canoe club scene, and sort of it felt like, if I could classify it, it felt like the era of deliverance, where people were canoeing and they were influenced by these movies like that to get out in the outdoors, and it was very much like a family sport, canoe clubs. I think it was 2,000 members in the CCA at the time. I mean, some crazy amount of people.
Okay.
Hold on for one sec here. And but in teaching kayaking during that period, from maybe the early 90s to the mid 90s, the people who were teaching were getting younger and younger and younger. And suddenly we're seeing videos like Southern Fried Creeking, which, if you've been around for a while, you remember was an old school creeking video, and it was getting a lot more daring and extreme. And at the same time, I was sewing board shorts in my basement on a home sewing machine. Board shorts are like the surf shorts that you wear, surfing, a line nose board short. And, I was just messing around basically. But there was an energy going on, and we didn't know it at the time, but the sport was about to go through a gigantic growth spurt, right? Where play boating and, extreme boating really transformed the sport into something completely different. And I think we kind of picked up on that. But I was making these board shorts, and I had a friend down in West Virginia at a place called Stark Moon, Denver McClure, who said, who saw what I was doing one day. He's like, I could sell these. And I was like, really? You can sell these things? He said, yeah, I can if you can make 20 or 30 pairs. And I was like, man, that's a lot of shorts. And so I kind of mentioned this to Kara, and the long story short is we decided we're going to do this as a business. We didn't really think it was going to be a lifelong thing or what, but it was worth a shot to see how it would go. And we found a guy going out of business in the Eastern Shore making board shorts, and kind of spontaneously we bought his 4 or 5 machines, 4 or 5 industrial sewing machines you need to make board shorts, of which I had no clue how to operate. I just had no idea what I was doing. But you figure it out, and next thing you know, we're making board shorts, and it was, the sport was growing, and within a year or so, it became pretty clear that we could possibly make a business out of this. Would you say that's pretty accurate? Am I missing anything here?
Yeah. People always ask us how we got started, and it's so many little steps of people helping us along the way, finding this guy with these machines. He taught us a lot. Then we found this other guy in Florida who taught us how to grade patterns from one size to the next, and really how to find fabric. People ask me questions like that, and this was, the internet wasn't what it is today. And one thing led to another. We made connections. We had a friend who knew somebody at Patagonia who helped us find a factory once we started growing. I lived in Confluence my whole life. There used to be a big sewing factory in that town that made clothes for LL Bean and Land's End. And that employed all my friends' moms and was my bus stop at Old School, which we now own. So there was, there was sewing going on there. So we were able to find people with sewing skills to help us. And this was once we got out of our basement and slowly moved across town. It was just one small thing led to another. And we just, like Denver said, he could sell our shorts. And then another retailer, I was still racing a little bit, I was in Colorado and mentioned it to a shop in Colorado. And then they wanted to order some. And I mean, really organic growth, from word of mouth, as much as it gets, I think.
But the crazy thing that happened so we started in the fall of 96.
96 or 97. 97.
Fall of 97. So it was just me sewing, and Kara was sort of answering the phone and cutting fabric and stuff like that. The next year we hired our first employee, B. And within 4 years, we had almost 50 people sewing for us in this building in Confluence. We moved into the sewing factory at that point, the old sewing factory, which had been sort of left vacant after NAFTA, and the North American Free Trade, 4 or 5 years earlier, and they moved all the business southward. And so we moved in there, and suddenly, we were running a rather, according by our standards, a very large business, and we really had no idea what we were doing. Make no mistake about it. We were, suddenly having 50 people standing around looking at you, figuring out, trying what to do that was something brand new for sure. So, but that was sort of the early years. If that makes sense. And at the same time, the sport was growing tremendously. Also, if you guys were around at that time, you just saw like Dagger and Wave Sport and Perception, and there was Bomber gear, and Stolk suddenly started making whitewater gear, and Lotus was making these life jackets, and we all thought we were going to be as big as snowboarding in a couple of years. It was an insane period of growth for sure. It didn't last, but those first 5 or 6 years were very exciting.
Well, I reread your account from 14 or 15 years ago. And one of the things that always stuck to me was the challenges of dealing with all those personnel. Any comments?
Yeah, I mean, so if you go, like, we didn't know this, like, these are things you figure out as you go along. But if you're going to make, say you're going to be a company making outdoor gear, like you're Patagonia, for instance, a brand that everyone knows, I'm sure. Patagonia's job isn't manufacturing the gear, right? Their job is to design the gear and make sure it's made correctly somewhere else. And there's a bunch of reasons for that, which we can get into in a minute. We started making stuff because we didn't know any better. That's A. And we were so small, no one would take our orders. We couldn't go to a contract sew factory because we were just so small, and we wouldn't even know what to ask for. So making it ourselves seemed a way of easing into it. And we didn't really have the cash to, we were broke, so we didn't really have the money to go to these things and place big orders anyway. And so we just started making the stuff ourselves, and very quickly, when you start doing that, and you're growing like we were, you start realizing there's a lot of problems with that business model. And the primary one being is you're suddenly running two different businesses at once. You're running a design and marketing company, which would, what Patagonia does, and you're running a sewing factory, which is a completely different job. It's a completely different skill set, different interests, different everything, and so suddenly I found myself, fixing sewing machines 8 hours a day, and organizing, the people working for us not to be basically, at each other's throats every day to keep sewing and making stuff, basically, I mean, it's just social work. I mean, at any time you have 50 people in a room, you're going to have issues, and so there's other things we could get into, but by about 2001 or 2002, it was clear that what we're doing was unstable.
Well, that's probably a good segue into this topic of offshoring, which
exactly.
You did have to do.
Do you have any?
But it's probably, most people don't understand why that happens, and you're certainly in a position to explain.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, besides all the things that John talked about by running a sewing factory, which occupied all of our time, between fixing machines, managing people, and keeping production lines going, it's a cash flow, very difficult thing to do because like, say our season is, you want to ship everything in the spring. That's when all your retailers want your orders, right? So you have to spend, 9 months making it all and not really getting paid for it. Or you hire 400 people to make it in a couple weeks and then lay them off, so we're juggling this, how do we keep 40, 50 people employed for a long period of time, buy all the raw materials, get them shipped from all over the world here. And then, oh, sorry, my son's friend's calling me. So then that's a difficult business model in and of itself. And then we had hired the people that we had hired in the town we were in, Confluence, was kind of an aging population. They were kind of getting close to retirement when the factory shut down. So we were kind of pulling these people back to work, and they were also, they worked for us for a few years and then they wanted to retire. So then, and then there was really not a skilled a sewing force. There's just not a lot of people learning to sew in this country anymore, especially in a town without a large population from other parts of the world where people are still sewing, right? So Confluence doesn't have that. So that was another issue. And then the third part I think about was that most of the fabrics that we use were made overseas. So we were bringing in the fabric and the scrap and paying duties and taxes to get it here, and then cutting it up and making it and then sending it out. So as people retired and groups of people retired, we would take that project, like paddle jackets or spray skirts or shorts, and move it closer to where the fabric was made.
Mhm.
And that seems to have worked because we're still here 26 years later.
If you think about like the money, so if you have to deliver products, say in fall of 2020 or spring of 2022, like right now, we would have to be making that stuff last summer, right? And we'd have to be ordering materials for that, last spring. And, so you're ordering stuff, and then we would sit down at the stores and not get paid for another couple of months. So, no one wants to loan money on that kind of a business model, right? The answer is to take these projects and move them to a factory that does it. So if you make shorts, send them to a factory that makes shorts, and they have 8,000 people making shorts. They can book you time in a factory for a couple of days and make every short you could ever need. They can make them in a week or something, and you don't pay for them until they ship. The fact that literally, with a few exceptions, every single one of those factories is offshore, that's the environment we have to work in. I should point out that, there are businesses that do make a go of it. I can say Cocotat's one of them. They still have a sewing factory in the US in Arcata. And the reason for that, and this is, to their credit, the reason for that is they do a lot of military contracts, which gives them a very consistent stream of work to do. In fact, I don't know their books, but I think that's a good size of their business, right? And that allows them to keep doing what they're doing. Or I think if you look at other smaller companies, like people like Seals, maybe, who makes one product, they can distribute that work a little bit better and make things work. But when you're making 8 or 9 or 10 or 20 things like we do, it just makes sense to take those and send them to somebody to make them, knows what they're doing, and not have to worry about it. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up something. You've got how many products right now?
About 1 million.
Well, this is the question. How come you haven't branched out into even more? Skiing or fishing or surfing or some stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's a bunch of different ways to answer this question. Yeah, so we got started building kayaking gear, at a time when you could make it, you could make a go of it like the way we did, and it worked, right? And if you look at our competitors, we were dealing, the competitors in the mid 90s would be like Stolquist or Cocotat or Rapid Style or some of these smaller brands. And by and large, this stuff was made in very small factories, and the quality was, not that high, and the technology was very simple. And the expectations from the customers as a result were very, very low, right? And we grew into that. Now, kayaking's actually evolved a lot since then. And if you were to start a paddle sports brand like us nowadays, the barrier to entry would be much higher, because a lot of stuff's made offshore and you have to go to these people with big orders. But for us to get into like skiing, for instance, we'd have, first of all, you'd have to work with a chain of retailers, to get the volume of business necessary to make this happen, right? And you go to a retailer and like say you go to REI and they say, well, great, you have a ski jacket here. What was your annual advertising budget last year to push these jackets? And you'd say nothing, or, and they say, well, Patagonia spent $25 million last year on advertising, and customers come in here and know that product really well, and they have a gigantic team and whatever, or pick the brand. So at that point, we have the know-how to make those kinds of products. Like nobody could make a better ski jacket than we can, right? I mean, we just know more about waterproof breathable fabrics by the nature of our sport than almost anybody. But that doesn't matter when it comes to selling these things to a wider market. The strategy to do that would be to raise, at this point for us, we'd raise a tremendous amount of money and start a huge marketing campaign, right? It would involve an equity deal, selling a huge chunk of our business to do that. To grow that business organically would require, either we had a simply fantastic piece of intellectual property in terms of ski wear that, was going to change the world, that we had a patent on, right? That would be A. B, we were world-class skiers and everyone in the world knew who we were as skiers, which we're not. Or C, we had the money to throw around to convince people otherwise, which we don't, or we're not willing to do. I mean, there are other reasons for it too, but that's as good a one as any, and so you start to think, sure, you want to grow your business, and you could grow it at the rate that the industry is growing, which is, a couple percentages a year, which is fine. And, and that's allowed us to maintain, we still own the business. We haven't had to, and considering we had $0 and 0 cents when we started this, and, we didn't have any rich relatives, throwing in money to the arrangement, it has been a terrible decision. But you look at you look at other sports, and you're like, well, how can we grow kayaking into a lifestyle that is appealing to people? So they buy, like, surfing is appealing as a lifestyle. So people buy surf shorts and surf t-shirts and all this other stuff, even though they never surfed. And Patagonia's done the same thing with climbing. They took climbing and made it into, an aspirational lifestyle. And that's been a troublesome road for kayaking for sure. Kayaking is, from what I gather, to most outsiders, seems like a bunch of nut jobs in wingsuits jumping off of cliffs or something. It's insane, or some degree of insanity. And so growing into a lifestyle type sport, like even snowboarding has managed, like Burton has managed to really sell a tremendous amount of apparel as just being a snowboarding company. There was a time, I think, certainly when we started, the mid 90s, there wasn't a brand in the sport who didn't think we were going to be as big as snowboarding. We're growing at 200% a year, and we'd roll into these trade shows and we were the rock stars, and it wasn't a matter of us being a $20 million company. If we were going to be a $20 million company, it was when we were going to be a $20 million company. But of course that didn't pan out. And then we spent a long time pursuing this idea that we really need to, capture that growth again somehow, and primarily because a lot of the companies who pursued that growth were in gigantic debt as a result. They had no choice. And that's when you saw a lot of companies getting rolled over into bigger companies, like Confluence bought a bunch of brands. And I think a lot of them were in Dutch because of that growth spurt. But as time goes on, I have to say, I think we're pretty happy that we stuck to our guns here, and we've stayed true to our sport, and the result is it took 25 years, but we're a pretty well recognized brand in the industry, and we're one of the only, I think one of the only standalone whitewater brands in the country, and one of the few in the world. Like even companies like Piranha make a lot of sea kayaks and touring, wreck boats and that kind of thing, or Liquid Logic is owned by a company that makes a lot of different, kayaks. Kokatet does a lot with, all, the military and other brands, and there's nothing wrong with any of that, but we're proud of the fact that we've managed to stay the course in that regard. So if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Well, tell me, how has COVID affected you all and the outdoor industry for that matter?
You want to try to tackle that one?
I'm sure that you've all heard the supply chain is incredibly disrupted, and it's been difficult. But I think the biggest advantage that we've had in terms of that is that from day one, this has been incredibly difficult every step of the way.
IR in general.
Not COVID, of course. No, I mean IR. I mean, we are used to, I think sometimes that we suffer from PTSD from IR. We are used to just hurdle after hurdle. And so these disruptions for us kind of were, besides COVID itself on a personal level, just in terms of a business, I'm like, okay, here we go again. Just when things were going, yep, here we go. I think we're.
But the industry, the industry has grown tremendously.
So on the other side of that, our sales have, it's been very good for sales, which makes the supply chain struggles even harder. But we somehow, when we thought we would lost everything, we'd worked 25 years to build, and we were actually making PPE here for the local hospitals for a while. In the middle of all that, I started realizing that our sales we were selling stuff like crazy. and we jumped on it and placed orders for, which kind of came in this fall, really early. And I think we jumped ahead of a lot of other outdoor companies in maybe because we could move fast and we're small. We jumped at, we got gear, and we've done pretty well with being able to keep gear, and our sales keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, COVID's been really crazy for the outdoor industry for sure. I mean, you just go to a national park now and you see like every, the parking is out the street, I mean, that's the industry in a nutshell. So, yeah.
The retailers I talk to still can't keep their shelves stocked.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a, I don't want to get too inside baseball and retail because I'm afraid most people find this boring, but kayak paddle sports is a sport that really is enhanced with a retailer experience, right? It really does help to go to a store and sit in a boat and try on a skirt and try on a couple dry suits and have someone who can really help you help that stuff out, help you with that stuff. I mean, the COVID has been great for that. And, when the stores do well, they put more money in their paddle sports departments and you get better representation for your brand in there. And it really is good for everybody. And there's a note of optimism there for sure. The scary thing right now is the inflation that we're seeing on the back end of this. And if I could give a piece of advice to anybody out there looking at buying outdoor gear now they're planning for 2024 is I would buy something now. If you're looking at buying, I wouldn't put it off for a year. Because I think people are gonna have a real sticker shock when they see things come rolling in. And I'm concerned that, there could be some panic moves on some manufacturers' parts to start exclusively selling direct and cutting the retailer out in order to temper retail prices. Which is, in my opinion, the wrong direction to go. I think we would need to work together on a solution to this, but unfortunately, like most industries, I don't know that we're that organized.
Well, saying all this, do you recommend that I start a paddle sports company?
Yeah. Yeah, mortgage your house, bet everything you have, place your order, and hopefully it goes well. If it's not, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, and you can sell C1s.
Right. That'll be great business.
I'm ready tomorrow.
Don't mortgage your house.
Yeah. Kara pointed out earlier the struggle. I mean, it's true. People will be like, you should make a dry suit, like a dry suit that's hot pink or whatever. And you're like, that, a mistake like that could take it, be catastrophic for us. I mean, we would, in being the sole owners of the company, we would lose everything. We always, every year you stand to lose, and this is not just us, this is everyone runs a small business. Any moment you could lose it all, right? The house, the cars, everything. It's all leverage, or it's all in the pot in terms of collateral for the loans we need for this. It's getting better every year. We're getting better at managing the risk, obviously, but it's a thing.
Well, anytime you come out with a new product, aren't you sort of faced with that specter?
Yeah, but I mean, we start years in advance before we bring it out. So,
But I think, it is nerve wracking.
Yeah.
I mean, people used to make fun of Cocatat for not changing the product line too much, and when we were a young company, we'd be like, oh, we're going to innovate.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's not necessarily the best business plan, especially when the customer base isn't really big enough to pay for the real innovation. You know what I mean? And it turns out in a lot of cases, just decent supply chain and delivering on time and quality control is the real innovation, So.
Well, where do you see your growth? We're seeing fewer and fewer people on the Yacht, for instance, or even out at Anglers Inn.
Yeah.
We're definitely past the peak of the 90s. Yet at the same time, like you say, people are getting outdoors like never before from COVID. So who are you going to try to produce products for?
Well, I mean, we have a bunch of anecdotal evidence on this. Like I couldn't tell you exactly how fast the industry is growing. Years ago, we used to be part of this thing called Leisure Trends, which is a market survey that gives some pretty good information on how the sport was growing. But the sport for the most part, I think seems pretty healthy. Although I think it's you're seeing a lot more presence in the class 4+ type market, rather than the class 1 and 2 market. Like the upper yacht, I don't think has ever been busier. I mean, I went up to the upper yacht a few times this summer, and it was, I mean, it looked like a music festival out there. I mean, it was insane. Same thing with Golly. I went to the Golly season this year, and once again, it was full on, as busy as I'd ever seen it. So there's that.
We're seeing a lot. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
We're a lot more women in the sport.
Right.
Yes.
and younger too. Again, we're seeing more kids, which I feel like, and we don't have this is kind of anecdotal. I don't think we have good data on this, but
yeah.
We hadn't for a while, so I don't know why, but I think John's right too. I mean, I've never seen the upper yacht like that in different parts of the country as well, where you're seeing growth.
Yeah, we had an interesting time back in the 2000s when Jackson Kayaks got started, and EJ was kind of running the show. And say what you will about EJ. He took a real interest in making a boat for every single kind of person out there. He made like 3 different kinds of kids boats and women's boats and boats that fit, really big people. And it was I don't think it was a great business plan for him, to mold all those boats, but it was a godsend for retailers during that time. And we started selling a huge variety of gear, to all different sizes, people we've never sold to before, because people were still able to get in these boats they couldn't get into, that they don't do that anymore. And I think there's a huge financial reason for that. But, it'd be nice for kayaking to reach that critical mass of participation where that did make sense. I think it will get there organically sooner or later, but the more participants you get, the more gear you can make, so it's sort of a things kind of ramp up together. People say, like, why don't you make dry suits for kids? Well, because no one's going to order them, or and we have to sell them to stores. The stores won't order them, and we only can make what people are going to order, so and so there's a bit of a slowly we can start expanding into other aspects of the market. But But answer your question, I don't know. I don't know how we're going to grow. We're going to answer the phone. We're going to be really nice. We're going to try and take care of our customers best we can. We're going to really try our hardest to make really good product. That's how we're going to grow, I think. That's worked so far.
Coming back from the world where we had to build our own boats and gear,
yeah, it's better than that for sure. Yeah, we've come a little bit since then.
But speaking of changes, how's the internet? I mean, you've spanned all these years. How has the internet changed your life in the outdoor gear market in general?
Yeah. It may tie in a little bit to what you're asking. So when we started, you would sell exclusively to retailers. We were a wholesale business only. You just couldn't come in and buy a piece of IR gear from us. We had to go to a store to buy it. And that's the way things worked, right? And you went to these trade shows like Outdoor Retailer and you sold these goods to the retailers. And it was a pretty good system, right? Because retailers would come to the trade show in August and they would tell you what they want for the upcoming year in a procedure called a preseason order. And the preseason orders we do, say September, October, something like that. And they would say, this is what we want for the upcoming year. And they place the order and you pretty much knew what you needed to make by about, by the end of the fall. You knew exactly what your business was going to look like. And it was a real risk sharing arrangement, right? We took the risk of making all the stuff, make sure it was made correctly. And retailers really took the risk of inventory. And so it was a pretty good partnership. The internet obviously started to disrupt that, as the internet does, right? And so you have this temptation for manufacturers to start selling direct. And there's a bunch of dynamics behind this. It can be out of frustration from the retailers not wanting to sell things that that they could sell. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. For instance, we could say we really want to make hooded sweatshirts out of fleece. We're really good at that. But all the buyers we deal with are paddle sports buyers, and they're like, we don't buy fleece. You need to go to the fleece buying department, and the fleece buying department really just buys from Patagonia. They're just not interested in you for the reasons we mentioned earlier for the ski brand or whatever, right? The internet allowed us to sell right to our consumers because we knew the consumers wanted that kind of stuff from us. And so it begins, right? And so and the retailers start getting ticked off, right? And they're like, wait a minute, we don't want to compete with you on this. And so you come up with this very tenuous arrangement where we're going to make sure we maintain retail pricing on our website, and you're not going to, discount too much. And, but that relationship has eroded over time. And the result of it is that we're in the spot now where retailers are like, honestly, you guys are selling so much direct now, we don't really want to place a preseason. We're just going to order as we need it, and manufacturers are like, well, if you're not going to preseason it, then we're going to keep really pushing our website and increasing SEO and traffic to our website. And there it goes. So it sort of gets worse and worse and worse and more aggravated over time. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but this is kind of the gist of it, And as retailers stopped really assuming the risk of inventory, if IR has to go into the season buying everything without having any of it sold or very little of it sold ahead of time, we start looking at all different ways of hedging our bet. And the industry does this in general. And so they'll do things like pro deals, right? The pro deal is a thing where if you're a quote unquote pro, you get a discount from an outdoor gear manufacturer. And this isn't kayaking, this is skiing, this is biking, this is the entire outdoor industry. And for many, many manufacturers, the pro deal has replaced the retailer's sales channel. The pro deal customers pay usually around wholesale, a little bit more. They pay with a credit card so that you get the money right away, whereas a lot of retailers have terms. And it's a very lucrative market. And you get brands like Patagonia, for instance, who print a pro deal catalog just for the pro deal customers. Or Prada, the clothing company, do the same thing. There's many brands that do this. That's how valuable that sales channel is for them, which further aggravates the retailer. Because that pro deal net is cast very wide. They're like, oh, you were in a boat once, you get a pro deal. You are the fire department, you get a pro deal. I mean, and then now they have companies bundling these pro deals for you, like
like Promotive
Promotive, where they will
20 different kinds of pro deals.
Yeah, and so you can join one website and get pro deals from 50 different brands, and it's very perilous, So the internet has been disruptive, right? And the truth of the matter is, at least for us, is you make the mistake of thinking that if we sell direct, we're going to make so much more money, but it's not true. It's not true because you're answering a ton of phone calls. You're doing a ton of shipping. You're doing a ton of return shipping. You're doing all the work the retailer could be doing, honestly, much better in person and avoiding all these mistakes of shipping crap back and forth. And you learn over 10 years that you're making, although you may have a stable, source of income from these direct sales, it's not as profitable as you thought it was. And the sport might be better off taking a step back and reflecting on that. Once again, that would take a real unified effort on the part of the industry, and I don't see that happening right away.
But I will say that the retailers that we have now, we have fewer retailers than we had, say, in the 90s, and but they're stronger and they're better, and they pay well. They offer. They're only around if they're offering a good service to their customers, and we have great relationships with them. I remember in DC alone, not that these were bad stores, but we had Hudson Trail, Spring River, which was huge. Potomac Paddle Sports came and moved around to various things. There's no real paddle sport retail. Valley Mill for a little while. Yeah, now Caleva's opening up a shop, right? Is it called Caleva?
I think so.
Yeah. But so in every little paddling area, every little paddling town, there were a bunch of small shops. And especially in New England, that we I mean, we were chasing payment like crazy. It was very difficult. We had some friends that sent a box of garbage COD to a store to get them to pay for a past bill, you know, I mean, but we don't have problems like that at all anymore.
That is true. Yeah.
So I think it's just in general, somehow it's healthier, even though the retailers have really had to compete against the internet. Yeah, but you know, I feel like every 5, certainly 10 years, you have to kind of reinvent your business from what you started to do. You know, I mean, we started because we liked kayaking, then it was all about managing people. It's selling to retailers, then it's managing our own website, you know, with many things also in there. But I think the state of the industry is quite strong right now.
Well,
Yeah, you could be right. I don't know.
another sort of another thing along this line. How do you run an environmentally friendly consumer goods company nowadays?
I mean, I think the most important thing we can do is keep our gear around for as long as we possibly can.
Good.
And we do. We go to, I don't know if you've seen some of the heroic efforts that somebody makes a blog for us on our website to repair people's gear. Because some of the gear, like neoprene itself, no matter what it's made from now, they claim that it's carbon black from tires, that it's been recycled, and
It's limestone core.
limestone core. The process of making the neoprene and the solvents involved are not great. There's just no way around it. But we can't find a better material to make a spray skirt. Believe me, we've tried. So the best thing we can do, and we all know that you need a spray skirt unless you're in an open canoe, is to keep them around as long as you can. Eliminate packaging. That's another thing that we spend a lot of time and effort trying to eliminate, just unnecessary packaging and waste within our business. I mean, we're not huge, but you know, every day we recycle everything. We don't print things we don't need. I mean, we just are very conscious of all those things. They're small things, but you know, they add up.
Well, I think the repair thing is going to be, you know, Patagonia's picked up on this earlier, but we have 2 repair facilities, one out here in Oregon and one out east in Pennsylvania. And, you know, we do this and it's not, you know, we don't make any money repairing gear. You know, it's a break-even process at best. But, you know, we do it out of commitment to the idea that, you know, the best thing we can do is keep these things going around forever. You know what I mean? If a dry suit can last 10 years, then we're onto something, you know. I do think that going forward, a litmus test for the most environmentally friendly outdoor companies will be based on the ability to repair that gear, right? Which for some companies is easy. For us, for instance, we have a sewing background. We had the machines already. When we design gear, we actually still make it. We design it by making one or several or dozens first before we make it.
And we design it so that it can be repaired.
Right.
We don't put all these necessary things that's gonna, when the zipper falls off, it's garbage. You know?
Yeah, like if you look at our dry suits, we've over the years made it so that we can pull a dry suit zipper in and out in 45 minutes to repair. You know, and we did that. And to a consumer, they may be like, "Oh, this garment's getting really simple," but that's simple for a reason. You know, it's so that because the zipper's going to break. You know, if you have the suit long enough, that's what's going to go. You know, and so we're doing repairs for another brand around here who just got started a few years ago. They make gear for another industry, and they brought us some bags for us to repair. And they were new to the industry, and they'd gone to Asia. And, you know, when you go to Asia for the first time, you're like a kid in a candy store. You're like, I'm going to do a pocket flap here and webbing straps here and, you know, insulated this and all that. And then they go like the zipper breaks and you realize it's going to be a 5-hour procedure to replace that zipper. Compare that to like JanSport bags, which were made in Portland, you know, 20 years ago.
Longer.
Or longer. And they bring these things made in the 80s that were made domestically, and they're made very simply as a result. And they can be repaired in a minute, you know. I think there's a real aesthetic to that, you know. And I think that will be the benchmark for a good product, will be along those lines. if you're interested in that kind of thing, which we are. So
So when you get that questionnaire from REI every year about whether you hire slave labor and have environmentally friendly materials and all that, are you able to navigate your way through that?
yeah, we operate in very small company. We've been working with a very small, very manageable size organizations in Asia that pretty much specialize in what we do. So it's a very, like in our dry suit facility, for instance, we share with another dry suit manufacturer. And that's basically all they do is make stuff for us. And we spend a lot of time in the factory, and we're there on the sewing floor, and we eat lunch with the entire staff and entire sewing floor. And it's not what people expect. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist out there. But the kind of product we make we're not in that world. We don't make commodity products that require dirt cheap labor. That doesn't work at all.
I didn't figure, but that questionnaire is pretty daunting.
Yeah. 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 You can rest assured most things in our industry, and I would say anything in the outdoor industry, it's going to be made in a pretty high quality factory, that's run very, very well.
Well, I don't think I have any other questions, unless you want to bring something up that I didn't. I'm willing to turn the floor over to the other listeners.
I don't know, anything we're missing here? It might be of interest in our life story here.
I don't think so.
Besides
It's hard to say.
research here.
We could talk at length about anything. It's just a matter of making sure we're not boring people to tears.
You find it interesting, so.
Maybe.
Well, why don't I open it up for questions right here?
Oh, I see
Yeah.
Gordon.
Hey,
Hey, Gordon.
Gordon Bear here. It's been a while, John and Kara. Great to see you, even virtually.
Yeah.
Let me take you away from our moment for a moment. John, you doing any expeditions? Kara, you doing anything around the slalom world?
Well, John can tell you, John just had shoulder surgery.
I was in Chile last fall. I was going to do a really great trip with some really great paddlers. And the first 15 minutes of the first day, I was chatting with someone in a class 4 rapid and flipped over and dislocated my shoulder. And so I just got surgery last week, and I tore everything: rotator cuff, labrum, yeah, bicep, slap tear.
And you're not even 60 yet.
No.
But he had no shoulder injuries for 53 years. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Because I've always had shoulder issues. And I have been trying to hang gates out here. We live in Hood River now, and there's all this great whitewater all around us, but no great spot for gates. And the Bonds, Ryan, Bond, and Sarah, they live just over here. We are not giving up yet, but we haven't found a great spot. But would love to get some gates out here. There's a great little Columbia Gorge junior kayak club that we paddle with. There tons of kids, a really great little group. And I'm dying to get some gates for these kids, but it hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
Wish we had a feeder canal.
Yeah.
It's still there. Still gates on it.
You still live in Brookmont?
Yep.
Nice. Good times.
Ed, you're on mute again.
I saw Jenny had a question.
Jenny put out a text, a chat thing.
Oh, right there. See that chat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her question
Has
is,
it been diff-
summer has been difficult to build, but what do you love most about it?
Oh, good question. I have.
Okay, good.
What I think, and this has really just kind of come to me recently, because this is our 26th year, 25th, 26th year.
Something like that.
I love being able to employ the people that we employ. And and that they love their jobs. And I love the people we work with every day. And everyone who works for us is a paddler. As a matter of fact, I think everyone that works for us is like a class 5 paddler, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. So, but that's not a credential at all. But there's a common ground amongst paddlers, and an understanding. And I love being able to give these guys and girls jobs that they love and they can contribute to what we're doing. That it's really satisfying. It's really fun.
But if you were still operating out of Confluence, you'd have to let them all take off every time it rained.
Oh, it's the same here.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, everyone's multi-sport, so they want to take off if it snows, if it rains. But but they work really hard, and we make it work, and we try to be as flexible as we can, and fair to everybody and get their job done. They're really responsible. They're a lot more responsible than I would be, I think, at their age.
Yeah. I mean, if I were to answer the question, it's, we spent a long time not knowing exactly what we were doing at all. And I feel like in the past, I don't know, however many years, I feel like we're finally getting good at what we do. And that's satisfying. I feel like we're kind of really starting to figure it out. And just from a personal standpoint, that's been satisfying. So.
Another question.
Yeah, that was a good question. I like that.
Yeah.
We have another comment here from Dave. You all mentioned that retail is so important, and it's kind of, we cover this somewhat.
Yeah.
In our metro area, we don't have any boat shops, and we haven't had in a long time. And I know Caleva's popped up, but it's been a long time since Spring River. I mean, even that kind of pales compared to like Jersey Paddler or Blue Mountain.
No, DC, I will say that from an industry standpoint, DC is one of the most confusing retail markets in the country. No manufacturer can figure out what's going on there because on paper, DC has it all. It has the city, it has the river, it has the money, it has everything.
Paddlers.
It has paddlers. I mean, it's got the canoe club, it's got the possibility for instruction, and yet I think you've had just a long series of very strange people running retail stores in that area. That's the only thing I can put my finger on. Kaleva, I have high hopes for Kaleva because they're firing on they're doing all the right things in the sense that it's primarily they have instruction as part of it. They have an ecosystem, because retail makes a lot of sense when you can get the boats to the river and get people on the water and you build a customer base through instruction. And rightfully so, they're hesitant about getting too involved in retail also. I mean, to be honest, you go out to Cleveland, if you've ever been there, I don't know what the hell they're doing out there. I mean, they're building rocket ships or herding goats or having haunted forests or digging mines, or I don't know what's going on.
You didn't get to the new retail space though.
I have not seen it,
no.
But at the same time, they're very industrious people, and the people running the store are very qualified to do it. Like Steve-O, for instance, is a great guy. So I'm hoping that's going to be a new generation. DC 15 years ago was a gigantic business for us.
Yeah, and we often said until Kaleva's really put the energy into this recently, why is there not a great retailer in DC? And I think that I don't know where you guys shop, but you guys go to the Yacht, you travel to paddle too. So I think people do a lot of their shopping at these other paddling towns. And to answer this question, DC is unique, certainly, in the what's happened in retail there over the years. But I kind of said this before. I think what we found is the paddling towns still have their shop, but there's one good one rather than like sort of three little ones that we had seen when we started this business. And it's kind of like the bigger ones just got bigger, Yeah.
We have got some people clicking on the raise hand thingy on Zoom. I don't know if you're noticing that or Ed, if you're noticing, but Chuck Thornton and Tom Hackman have their little hand dealies up. And Graham's phone does too. So if you guys want to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, fire away.
Go for it.
I don't know if this was asked before. I was just wondering if we're ever going to see another Hammer Factor episode.
I know.
Good question.
Ask John Grace. He's the guy that's been lagging right now. He had this is the podcast that we do. If you've listened to the podcast, you probably heard some of the stuff before that I said, but Grace, his stepmom had some hard problems, and then he was on the Grand Canyon, and it's going to happen. I'd like to think it's going to happen the next week. So, yeah.
On that subject, I just want to say I love the Hammer Factor. Thank you, John. I look
Thank
keep
you.
at it. Keep at it. For those of you who haven't listened, if you're a paddler, like it's the best white podcast out there. It's so funny and
Awesome. Thank you.
if you're not a paddler, it won't make any sense. So
Oh, no.
Right.
That is
thank
very
you.
true.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Kara and John, it's good to see you. This is Chuck Thornton.
Hey, John.
You know, I run this little organization called the Great Falls Foundation.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've grown quite a bit in the last few years. We sponsor events from, you know, Kentucky to New York now, and we may be adding a couple of other states here soon. And I encourage my team to not solicit the paddle sports industry for swag and sponsorships and so forth, on the theory that, you know, I'd rather be growing the industry than taking from it, and adding to it than taking from it. So what are your thoughts on that?
You know, I think in general, like, well, we could probably go out and get a pro deal on bikes. You know what I mean? If we wanted to, just because we know, you know, we're in the industry. But instead, we decided to go down to the retailer here and buy bikes from the retailer here in town. And the retailer gave us a discount because we just decided we're going to do all business with him. And in exchange for that, you know, we have a great relationship in terms of gear repair and that kind of thing. I mean, I think that's a relationship I'd like to see occur in paddle sports, where people would form a relationship with a retailer, you know, in that regard. I'm not sure. Am I answering the question the right way, or are you thinking of something different?
Well, I guess part of the question is, you know, is it worth the cost to you to, you know, provide some skirts or some shirts or that sort of thing?
Sorry. I'm thinking something
for the publicity versus, you know, I just don't, I don't want to be hitting you all up for, you know, every little event that we do, because I'm sure you get hit up for every little event across the country.
No, I would hit us up. You know, we may not always say yes, but we have a budget for that, and it does work, you know, and it can't hurt. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we won't do it if it's hurting us, for sure. So.
Along that line, I see your name every time I open my AW journal. I see your name on a number of paddling videos there. One of the backers. You obviously have taken time to promote the industry in very generous ways.
Yeah, we have a great relationship with American Whitewater, and we're proud of that. We don't manage this personally. John has no idea about money at IR. He makes stuff. If you didn't know, I find we do get hit up, you know, all the time for events, but we love grassroots events like what you're doing, Chuck. We love those events. I mean, those are core to the sport. Sometimes it's harder when it's not as direct to what we do. An event will hit us up, you know, and it's not quite so involved in whitewater paddling. So we welcome it. Yeah, we want to support those kind of events, and maybe you want to run the upper yacht race for me someday soon, so I don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah, you know, we'll be happy to have that conversation sometime.
I've made it as easy as I can. We'll keep it going though. But you guys helped with the top yacht race just the other weekend, right?
We've been the host of the top yacht race for 5 or 6
geez.
years now. Mhm.
Oh, nice.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
last weekend was, we were supposed to have the lower yacht race.
Yeah.
Along
I
with the
watched.
wild water team trials, but the lower yacht was at 6 feet. So we postponed that for 2 weeks, but we did go ahead and have the wild water team trials on the middle. But you all did provide some swag for that. So we're holding on to that for the open races in 2 weeks.
Sweet. Yeah, one of our employees was doing these little loop races during the summer, just like
Yeah.
a really informal. We're really hoping we get that going again this summer. That was really fun.
Yeah, I've heard some talk of that recently.
Yeah. When I was young, when I was a kid, they used to have this guide slalom, which was huge. All the rafting companies came up and had teams, and it was so much fun. And that it was kind of on that get the rafting guides out, and a community event there. We love stuff like that. So
Well, for this event, I think the partnership happened because my son Tyler knows Andrew.
nice.
As good as any. As
That's
any. So,
Cool.
all right,
I
Bill
don't see
Kirby.
any other questions. I can't believe it. We're an
Bill
inquisitive.
Kirby.
Yeah, Bill Kirby has his a little yellow hand up.
Oh, good. Bill,
What do you got, Bill?
Unmute, Bill.
He's trying.
No?
Well,
We can see you.
There we go.
All right.
So I'm sorry about that. I wonder what your thoughts might be about the changes in the industry with regard to longer boats and composite construction.
Hmm.
I've turned 70 this year, so lighter boats are really a big thing on my list.
Yeah.
You've talked to the boat company, because I'm the same way. I feel like I never hurt a boat really. I would give some. I'd love to shed a few pounds carrying a kayak to have, I would give up some of that durability to have a lighter kayak. But the boat companies, they just get hassled about warranties, if they make a lighter boat. So, I mean, I think you guys talked about that on Hammer Factor, didn't you?
Yeah. The place where the composite boats have a chance right now is in play boating. That's where all the money is being spent with composite boats right now. And I think EJ with his new venture at Epic,
Yeah.
he's looking at making composite boats as well.
Apex.
Apex, yeah, Apex. I'm sorry, thank you. In my opinion, we need a kind of a sea change in the materials used for whitewater boats. I think there's a better material out there that we're currently using, some kind of thermoplastic or something like that. That would have close to the strength of plastic, but a gigantic reduction in weight. But there's just not a lot of money in the industry to develop this kind of technology, and the companies that could conceivably do it, would be Confluence, and they just have, or Pelican now, they would have zero interest in this kind of an endeavor. They just have no interest in whitewater as a sport or an industry,
You'll
or
see a lot of
marginal,
Europe.
Yeah, it's going to be some European company yeah, you're probably right. I mean, we're pretty involved with the industry in general. And I can say from our perspective, there is really, outside of a playboat here and there's zero talk of it. It's dead in the water. Yeah.
I've been saying for years that whitewater paddlers, I wish we could get back to the days when whitewater paddlers did not think as consumers.
Yeah.
When we were partners with the local builders, like you may remember Ted Waddell or Bill McKnight and those folks.
Sure. Yeah.
The idea of a warranty on a whitewater boat, that's madness. So I wish we could get away from that. But, a product that's designed to slam into rocks, have a warranty on it, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, but I know I'm talking to a wall, but that's all right.
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, I mean, it's driven by the market and what the market wants, and it seems like the market wants they want a Waka OG, or they want a Steez or something like that, and they can want to run the little white or the upper yacht, 90 times, or the green 90 times a summer, and not have to worry too much about breaking a boat. And,
Right.
in a modern, at the skill level, people are paddling these rivers now in their second or third year in a boat, where it used to take 10
Years.
years before you got to that point, because you just had to treat the boat better, among other things,
Right.
But you know what, it seems to me that, I mean, people still replace their boats after 2 or 3 years, even though they're made of space age modern plastics. And that's what we used to do with home built boats. So what's the diff,
Yeah.
Except that these boats weigh 3 times as much as the ones we used to make in our basements. So,
Well, I would say mortgage your house and start building some composite boats. You might be onto something.
Theme of the talk.
I'm a former small business owner. I'm not about to enter that.
you know the drill.
You've been there.
I gotta say, interject here, because there really is an option these days to get, your own composite boat. I mean, you'd have to go through Corin Addison, but his model of, tell me what you want and I'll build it and you'll have it in 6 months, especially these days, it's not that, I mean, compared to the new price level of plastic boats, it's a pretty good value.
I was going to mention that. I've been following that.
I mean, Corin's strong point in a lot of ways isn't running a business. He doesn't have a great track record there, or even as a boat designer necessarily, but Corin is really good at sort of seeing what's coming around the corner.
Yeah.
Like he saw planing boats before anybody did, really. And, he saw SUP as a sport way before anybody did. And, if you're a scholar of whitewater, like I am, you look at Corin as someone who can kind of see things coming up, and you may be onto something there. I know I'm familiar with his composite boat business. As a designer, he makes very esoteric boats. He would be like, very difficult jazz music for a musician. He's not playing pop music by anybody's standards. But
No, you're exactly right. But he'll build. I mean, if you tell him you want a Waka Steez, he'll build that too.
Yeah, I mean, there might be some ethical problems there, and most people don't know exactly what they want in a boat, or wouldn't know how to design exactly if they were asked to. But it's an interesting model. I'm kind of a little bit familiar with what he's doing. It's definitely an interesting model for sure. So
It's an interesting technology with the what do they call it, the loss casting molding process, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So.
I'll just say, this is David Cunningham. I'll just say that the guys that I paddle with on Thursdays, most of us are retired, and the number of river elves that you're seeing with Chris Swallow making them down in Alabama, we're seeing more and more people with exactly that, where you get a boat that weighs about 25 pounds. And it's a pretty good little creaking boat that I bet there are 5 or 6 of them that people I know have them that are in their 70s. So they might not be running the upper yacht, but they're running the lower yacht for sure.
Kind of combining what Dave Cottingham just said with your mention of Corin, he gave some sort of talk a few years ago talking about the unsustainability of the pricing of plastic boats right now.
He's 1,000% correct on that, by the way. Yeah.
We expected something that just can't last.
Yeah, I mean, he gave a speech a couple of years ago when, for a bunch of reasons, you could buy a whitewater boat for, you could poke around and find a brand new design for $900 to $1,000 from Appomattox or something like that, which is exactly the same amount of money you'd pay for a Crossfire in 1990, whatever, right? I mean, and as an industry, we were terrified to raise the prices on these things, which was ludicrous. And that's one of the reasons why we did see there's a bunch of reasons, but one of the reasons you saw a downsizing the retail market, because it was such a lousy business to be in. The margins are getting worse and worse and worse and worse every year. So.
Thanks, you guys. I'm very glad to talk to you, and
Thank you.
Fascinating conversation. Thank you.
Hey, on another subject here, Jenny had another interesting comment, and she loves your name.
Oh, good. I don't.
Yeah, John's never liked it.
How did you come up with that name?
Oh, it's
I mean, it was dumb. We honestly thought we were doing this for about 2 months. We'd be flat broke again and out teaching kayaking or trying to hit up the Olympic Committee for health insurance again,
No, yeah, John wanted a name that was very like industrial sounding. Like there's a skate company called like United Technologies or something like that. I forget what it's called, or Allied Technologies.
Yeah.
It was like skateboarding. And I said, well, it's got to have water in it. It's got to have something to do with water. And so I'm looking through the dictionary and we said, how about Immersion Research? And there you go. It's a mouthful, but IR works, that's a little easier to, but he's never liked it. And it's, here we are stuck with it. I'm glad that you like it, Virginia.
Yeah.
I don't mind it.
I don't like anything we make. Like as soon as we make it, I'm like, oh God.
I'm wearing an IR hoodie. They call this color rainbow trout. But John's wearing something from our tariff.
A traitor. Yeah.
Well, this is pretty good. We've gone on a long time, and I don't see we've lost people. So we're so glad that you all came and told us your tale. And it's different than any other program we've had. I mean that in a positive sense.
Well, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks
This
for
is a
having
great
us.
opportunity to talk to you guys.
Yeah.
No, and again, sorry for the silence. There's a lot of clapping going on mute right now.
Good.
We'll see you guys on the yacht.
No one else has anything to say. I'd say
Thanks, John.
let's get this down.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Kara.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Meet me at Jackson Hole sometime.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
If you found this interesting,
you, guys.
you can listen to the Hammer Factory. I'll pick up right where we left off. So, and I'll bring up the composite boats question again, Bill. It sounds like there's more to be talk about here there's more to it than what I know. So we'll take a deeper dive into that.
I concur. That's a good one, John. Hey, how long have you guys been out west? How long have you guys been in Oregon?
Almost 4 years now.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Thank you. It's been very enjoyable. I've learned a lot, and it's interesting hearing you talk about building your business from the ground up. It's been quite a good talk. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Thank you. Thanks for making it happen.
Yeah, thanks. All right, Ed, we're going to get you on the Little White here next time you come out here.
Yeah, find some class 2 for me, okay?
No, it's going to be a little bit harder than class 2.
All the class 2 has a class 5 on it. All of it. I'm not kidding.
You don't have to run Spirit, but we'll get you 2 Spirit. We'll do it's an easy portage.
I was thinking about Sahali.
That's fine.
There you go.
I'll take video.
All right, I gotta pick. Good night, you guys. Thanks.
All right.
Well, good night, you all.
Good night.
Thanks, guys.